So you've been teaching English for 7 years, I think, right? So you must have some, let's say, thoughts on rhythm. Why do you think people should care about rhythm?
Yeah, sure. Well, I actually been teaching English for 13 years.
Did I make a
Yes.
mistake, or did I just lowball you on purpose? Hmm. Yeah.
Yes. So it's been a
Hmm.
while.
Yeah.
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 And something, this is part of things that even as a student, I didn't think that we could practice because
Mhm.
this is something that I always thought that if we only knew grammar, everything was going to be good. And then
Mm.
we were going to be fluent and we were going to have a good rhythm. But then I started to notice because I consider myself a passionate learner of English. And
Mhm.
I started noticing that even though you know a lot of grammar, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to have a lot of fluency or that you are going to sound like you want to sound, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you can know a lot of grammar, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be a confident speaker.
Mhm.
And then I started to take some courses on pronunciation, fluency, and so on. And I started to realize that there is so much more than grammar.
Mhm.
And I understand I'm not blaming it on schools,
Yeah.
but this is something that is normally not taught. But I think that it is because, well, obviously, the most important step is going to be for us to be able to use grammar properly, to make sentences correctly, and so on.
Mm.
This is something that we can learn in order, like, to polish our English, and
Hmm.
that is something that I discovered along the years
And
being
was that as a
a
student
student.
or when you were teaching? When did
No,
that
I
kind
was
of come
already a
to?
teacher,
Oh,
but I
really?
but yeah, but something that happened to me is like, okay, I am a teacher. I know that I have a good level.
Mhm.
But when I speak, I still notice that, for example, when I am telling an anecdote, when I'm telling a story, when I want to talk about something that happened to me when I was on vacation, I was not able to express it in the same manner. There was something in there that I didn't have. And then I discovered a program on the internet, a course. I took it and it changed the way I think of English right now.
Changed your
Yes.
life, changed
It
yeah,
changed
like,
everything.
sometimes you just need one. Do you remember whose course that was? Do you wanna say, or do you wanna just
Yeah,
keep it?
yes, I need to say it.
Okay, okay, tell us.
Yeah, Hadar's
Oh,
course. I
Hadar.
was I was
I didn't know you
even
did that one. Oh, wait,
yeah,
this was which course?
was accent makeover at that time.
Accent
Yeah.
Makeover, yeah, and then she's got a bunch of other courses too. And did you and I meet in her teacher's
Yes.
academy as well? Yes, that's where we first met,
Yeah.
that's
I was also
right.
a member of the Teachers Academy,
Mhm.
because when I took her course, I was like, "I really wanna teach this because it's
Mm.
going to be so useful, it is going to help a lot of people."
Mhm.
And I decided that I also wanted to continue on that path.
Mm.
And then when she opened the academy for accent coaches and
Mhm.
pronunciation teachers, I was like, I definitely need to know how to teach that. And yeah,
I'm in. Yes,
yeah.
yes. Definitely, definitely. That's so you saw both sides of it then. Did you feel like there was some connection or some difference? What were those 2 perspectives like in having that kinda that idea, that transformation, that information from the side of as a student and as a teacher? What was different or the same
Mm.
for you?
No, they were definitely not the same.
Mm.
When I took the course as a student, there were so many things that I didn't know.
Mm.
Like, for example, I didn't know that there were like different kind of sounds, like voiced
Mhm.
consonants and voiceless
Mm.
consonants and so on. And I was
Mhm.
actually watching one of my videos when I was a student, and it was so difficult for me to make a voice th, for example.
Uh-huh,
So
uh-huh.
since well, something that I liked is that I needed to face the challenge
Yeah, yeah.
and learn and understand the mechanics and understand that it
Mm.
was possible to do it. And then when I started teaching, like, I started to consolidate everything and everything started to sink in. And I was like, ah, okay, now everything makes sense now.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you were already teaching at that time, you just weren't teaching the same things, so you already had this mindset probably to deconstruct things and figure out, like, where the problem exactly was, and like you said, it mechanics of it,
Yeah.
right? We all have the same mouth, but I'm sure there are a lot of sounds there are many click languages, for example, where, like, I would have a hard time. Tonal languages are really difficult for me. And so I know that, like, we all have the same structure biologically, but there's something missing. There's missing information, missing muscle tone, things like that. So that was a revelation, it sounds like, for you.
Yes.
Yeah. Question. Do you have the old recording by any chance?
Yes, I have it. It is on Facebook. I just need to try to
Uh-huh.
find a way to download it because I don't know how to do it.
Oh,
But
me
yeah,
either.
I have a lot of videos in there, like
Oh,
my practice
nice.
and stuff.
And
Yeah.
and would you recommend people keep videos of themselves, right, when they're beginning, through middle, through like their whole time? For you, you found that useful, but you are already a teacher. If you could give advice to other people who say, "I don't think I'm going to record myself," what would you say to that?
Do it. When you go to a party,
Yeah.
before going out of your house, you
Hmm.
go to the restroom and look at yourself in the mirror, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's like,
Uh-huh.
okay, my hair is good, my clothes look good, and
Hmm.
everything. So when you speak, you also need to see yourself on
Mm.
video, right?
Mhm.
Because that way you can know, okay, my gesticulation is okay. Probably I just
Yeah.
look like a ventriloquist. I'm not having like any facial expressions, not
Mhm.
anything like that.
Mhm.
And something that I've noticed in class sometimes it's when, for example, I have a student who cannot pronounce something.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, don't look at me, look at your own video.
Mm.
And then it's like, are you really rounding your lips for the pronunciation of the R? And then they say it again, and it's like, oh no. Then I tell them like, you need to look like this, and I try to exaggerate
Yeah.
my gesticulation a little bit so that it is clearer for them.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
when they repeat the same thing, but they are paying attention to how they look, they
Yeah.
notice the difference. Something that happens is that, and this happened to me a lot. It's like, hey, Bianca, you need to round your lips. And you're like, but I'm rounding my lips. And it's like, no, you're not. But you will not be conscious of this until you see yourself,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes. Or yeah,
So
objective
definitely,
data. Yes, we don't believe it. And in fact, think of a time before cameras and pictures when somebody just was doing a portrait in charcoal, right? Outside of a picture of ourselves, outside of a recording of ourselves, we don't actually know what we sound like. We think we know. We know what we sound like in our own head, but in fact, we have no objective kind of data. I do the same thing in Spanish, right? I'll say something and somebody will say, "What? What did you say?" And I'll say, "I said this." "No, you said this." I'm like, "No, no, I said this." Like, I think I said it. I experienced the
yeah,
same thing. And so I know what that's like on the other side for sure.
yeah,
I am pro video too. Not to say that it's easy. Super, super difficult, but so worthwhile, I think. So you have all these old videos of yourself, and you gave an
yes,
example of the voiced TH, for example, that used to not exist. And now it does. So in Hadar's course, you were learning a lot of the mechanics, it sounds like, and maybe ways to put it together. And besides pronunciation, was there any kind of a bell that went off about rhythm specifically?
yes. I always remember that rhythm is a combination of the short versus, how does she say? Short versus long
Mhm.
and high pitch versus low pitch, something like that.
Uh,
Right?
uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
it's like, yeah, because if you know, and actually, this is the reason why I was thinking of talking about thought groups and word stress and reductions, right? Because if we know how to pause correctly,
Mm,
first of all, we are going to be able to identify like when we have a challenge and to disguise it a little bit so that the other person doesn't realize like, he made a pause in there because probably he finds it difficult to pronounce this, right?
mhm.
And if you stress something, then you're not going to sound monotone, and you're also going to be giving like hints to the other person, like, okay, he emphasized this. It's because that part is important, right?
Mhm,
He
mhm,
wants to be ironic, so for that
mhm.
reason, he emphasized this other thing, right?
Mhm, mhm,
And the
mhm.
other thing that I consider that was also something completely new for me was reductions.
Ah, the light
Because
bulb went off.
yes, because I remember like being a teenager and trying to sing songs, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And I was like, there was this song and I tried to sing it, but when I was reading the lyrics, it didn't make sense. Like it was like I saw
Here, that's not it.
yeah, and I
Mhm.
remember I saw the, and they didn't say that, they didn't say the, it's like the, right? Or I saw with,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was not with, it was like
Mhm,
with. And now imagine
mhm.
with a, with a,
Uh-huh,
right?
uh-huh.
And it's like they didn't say with the. Like I was
Yeah.
even like expecting that there was going to be like a pause between one word and the other, and it's like for that
No.
reason I don't
No, no, no.
understand.
Yes, yes. And you said when you were a teenager, so are we talking about cassette tapes? Are we talking about CD eras? What were you doing this on? Because nowadays, I mean, we
Yes.
can see it, but I know when I was a teenager, which I think I'm older than you, I was playing a cassette tape, pause, rewind,
Uh
play,
huh.
pause, rewind. And it was just a constant thing, just back and forth, back and forth. Oops, I went too far. and then I came back. Were you a cassette tape kind of guy at that time or more CDs?
I had some cassettes, but
Mhm.
it was just like in the last part of the
Mhm.
of that stage, and then it was more like CDs and
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Winamp and
Yeah, oh,
Ares
that's
and things
right.
like those. Yeah.
I forgot about that. Then MP3s came along and I think we lost that, like, tactile sense, right? I remember with the cassette tapes, right? Everything was very physical, and there was
Yeah.
a weight to the buttons, right? And you could feel the machine going
Yeah.
and we don't have that anymore, right? When you press fast forward or you move the little slider, it's like there's something missing, I think, now to that kinesthetic reaction. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That maybe I'm just showing my age here.
No, it's okay. But yeah,
Mhm.
and now it's actually simpler.
True, true. Easier, right?
It's simpler for everyone. It is
Mhm.
easier.
More
Like you don't need to
accessible.
have like a lot of yeah, you don't need to have like a lot of gadgets or things
Mhm.
like those. Now, if for example you just want to repeat something, or if you even want to watch a video and only watch a portion of the
Yep,
video when they are
yep.
going to say something that is challenging for you, you can
Mhm,
just
mhm.
go back and even modify the speed,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's
You can change the
amazing.
settings, right, on your podcasts, on your YouTube videos, and nowadays we have all the subtitles, not I shouldn't say subtitles, the captions at the bottom, so we can really match what we see with what we hear pretty instantly, right? No more fumbling around with papers and your CD booklet or anything like that. You can just so easily see it. And I don't know if you do this. I as even in my first language in English, I'm a big fan of using subtitles or captions, and
Mhm.
you can see when they're good and when they're bad, and you can see when there's a small mistake, or you can even see like, "Oh, there's a silent E there." Ah, I can kind of see how they're linking. And are you the kind of person who enjoys and appreciates using captions and subtitles?
Yes, and
Mhm,
also even in my own language. Like sometimes when I compare, for example, the captions on TikTok,
mhm.
because they are generated in automatic,
Oh.
even when I say something in Spanish, sometimes it's like, what's going on? Why is it a different word?
Oh, yeah, I get that in English
But
all the time. It's like,
yeah,
I know what I said is correct. I know it's pretty clear. Sometimes for me, there's symbols or sounds, and I know they're not gonna get
yeah,
that, the auto captions, but and it's okay to begin with, but I go through every word, and I make sure that everything is there because I know they're helpful to
yeah.
people. And so to come back to rhythm, like, if you're looking at captions on a movie or whatever, how can that help you with your rhythm? If you're seeing words and listening to them at the same time. You mentioned short and long and like maybe groups of words. How does that help you understand the rhythm?
Mhm. I would say that there's a series of steps.
Mhm.
Number one, we need to understand the pauses. Yeah. So
Mhm.
it's like, okay, there need to be pauses. And before that pause, everything is just going to be like a string of ideas, like everything
Mhm.
is going to be
Mhm.
connected, right? And then you make a pause, you read a little bit, and then you continue saying something like until you pause, right? That is something that I like about captions because you can pay attention to those things.
Mhm.
And then the next step would be that we need to pay attention to the words that are emphasized.
Mm.
Now we're
Mhm.
going to see that not every word is usually emphasized, right? Um, But if, for example, if you are giving a series of steps and obviously you have, so you're going to start noticing that all of those verbs are going to be emphasized because I don't want you to get confused with my instructions, for example, right?
Mhm.
If I am telling a story, for example, then there are also some parts that I need to emphasize in order to try to grab your attention better, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we need to pay attention to the things that we can emphasize, okay? And another thing that I consider useful is try to practice, but with different kinds of speech. Not everything needs to be formal. There can be some things that can be fun, a
Mhm.
little
Mhm.
bit funny. There are some other things that can be a little bit more serious. There are some
Mhm.
other things that can be as if you were angry or something, because that is going to also help us gain more control of our voice when we are speaking another language. Because
Mm.
I can tell you, and I include myself in that, like in Spanish, I know that I express myself one way, but in English, it's completely different.
Yep.
However, at least till now, I am able to demonstrate when I am angry,
Mm.
I am happy. I can go and if I
Mhm.
am, for example, in the States, I can complain about something and be clear,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
this is something that before having this formation, I didn't know how to do because I was like, if I was angry, I sounded like the same than when I was happy because my intonation was super monotone. It was super
Uh-huh.
flat.
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
This really helps us with that. And the other thing that we can pay attention to would be reductions, because as I was
Mm.
telling you,
Mhm.
it even helps you improve your listening. Because as I was telling you, I was reading the lyrics of the song and it didn't make sense. Like it
Yes.
was like they are not saying it the same way I have it here,
Their English isn't very good,
right?
these people. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, sometimes we think that in order to be clear, we need to pronounce word by word.
Uh-huh.
However, when we speak to other people, this can be very tedious,
Yes, yes. For them too,
you
not
know?
just for you, the speaker, but for the
Yeah,
listener too, yeah? For example, when I listen to things in Spanish, let's say I'm watching videos and like you mentioned earlier about the verbs, let's say I'm watching a cooking video, right? It's it's a lot more difficult, I find, for me to listen in Spanish because every syllable is pronounced.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's hard for me to pick out the most important information. And you guys don't reduce things. So I hear everything complete all the time and I'm thinking, why is this necessary? Like why, of course from my perspective. And
yeah,
I feel like wait, can't we just like shorten this? But
yeah.
this is something you would say, "Hey, here it is in English." So how can that help me and what can I notice there? What should I be looking for in reductions?
And reductions, I think that a good exercise would be to take something, to take a text
Uh-huh.
and see, okay, how would you pronounce this? And
Yeah.
probably make a short recording, video, audio,
Yeah.
whatever. Right? As long as we can hear and listen to ourselves. Like, okay, how do I pronounce it? How does it sound in my head? How does it sound when somebody else says this?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Like 2 weeks ago, we were just closing one of the courses and we had this exercise, which was a speech analysis. And
Nice.
it was like something really amazing for students because it was like, yeah, they really don't say I am. They say I'm. In some other
Mhm.
cases, it sounds more like am, right?
Mm.
In some other
Mhm.
cases, they don't even say it's
Mhm.
like going to, like
There's a lot
I'm
of
gonna show
variation
you
in
this.
there
Like
that
there
you
are
don't
so many
know.
variations.
Mhm,
Yeah. And it's
mhm.
like, yeah, there are many reductions that we can apply. It's just that you need to be open, you need to hear them, you need to also be curious and be like, okay, why is it like this? Because
Yes,
there
yes.
is an explanation about everything.
Mhm, mhm.
Another comment that I received is like, we thought that there are rules and we thought that there were no rules, right? But yeah, there
Ah.
are some rules.
Uh-huh.
Like, for example, if we have like a consonant cluster, what to do
Mhm,
in order to be
mhm,
more fluent? What can we
mhm,
do if, for
mhm.
example, we have this combination of letters, consonants, and so on, right? And there are many things that we're not going to be able to learn in a normal grammar course. But I always say that pronunciation needs to be like a different subject
Oh,
when we learn English.
could
Yeah,
you imagine? Wow. And I know that teachers do their best, and I know that a lot of times they have to do what the school tells them or what the book tells
yeah,
them.
exactly.
And there's very little information about that available for them. So maybe they're led to believe, hey, this isn't that important, or I would like to, but I don't have time because I have to give these exams and do all these things. I've been there. So I know that it's just not an ability that they have. They just don't have that ability to add that to their already very heavy basket of things that they're
Yeah.
doing. So I don't fault anybody. But boy,
Mm.
wouldn't things be very different if that were a priority for people?
I don't know. I don't know if it should be better to learn first,
Mm.
like, for example, pronunciation and so on,
Mhm.
because I think
Or
that
later.
probably it would make the journey longer,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I know
Interesting.
I'm not, for example, I don't blame teachers for not teaching this.
Yeah.
It's because we need to cover, I mean, I have also worked for schools and we need to
Yeah.
cover a program. And sometimes
Mhm.
programs are just so packed with information that it's
Mm.
very difficult to do it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But little by little, like we can learn some things. Now we have a lot of resources on the internet, so we
So
can also
true.
learn more things,
Yep.
right? But I
Mhm.
think also another thing is that we need to learn how to love English or whatever language we
Ooh.
are learning. Because
Uh-huh.
I was actually thinking about it today, and I don't know anybody who is a fluent speaker. They say things like, I hate English.
Yes, you're
Like
not gonna do that.
everybody who knows how to speak
Uh-huh.
English well and who feels comfortable like communicating and everything is somebody who is like, oh, I like English.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
when we say no, I don't like English, English is just not for me, English is boring, English is difficult, it's like
Mhm.
those people don't learn. So
So you've had a love for English. You notice that other people who go far, it's because they love English, most likely. Everyone else kind of drops off. And what would be your
yeah.
goal about that if you had one?
to help people enjoy English.
Mm.
Because even though it sounds like very romantic and everything, it makes a lot of sense because I was very lucky and I had very good English teachers
Mhm.
and they were very passionate. So when I started to see that it was not as difficult as I thought, it's when I
Mhm.
started enjoying this. I don't know if
Ah.
you know this, but when I was in elementary school, I was in a school that was not bilingual, and then
Oh,
I
okay.
was transferred to a different school, and my classes were in English.
Mm,
And it was
suddenly.
so difficult for me because I thought that I knew English, but then when I arrived to this school, like my classmates would be speaking in English, my teachers, and it was like I didn't even understand anything.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was accepted in that school because my father was a teacher there. So it was like, okay, we're going to accept
Ah.
your
Uh-huh.
child,
Uh-huh.
but he needs to keep up and he
And
needs to
catch
catch
up.
up with the rest of the students and
Yeah.
everything. Because if he
Oof.
doesn't do it, then we will need to say thank you and you will need to
Mhm.
try to find a different school. So my father
Mhm.
started to hire some teachers and they were giving me additional classes. So I was going to school in the morning and then in the afternoons, I was going to other
Mhm.
different courses. And it was like crazy, right?
That was a lot
But
at
the
one
good
time for a
thing,
child.
yeah, that was a lot. But the thing that I liked is that my classes were not boring,
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Do you think it
Eh,
was because it was in some of them were in English, that's what made it interesting to you as a kid? Like it was intriguing, or is it was it two things? One, it was interesting, and two, it was in English, or was it the fact that it was in English that kind of made it interesting for you?
Um, it was in English,
Mhm.
yes. But the other thing is that my teachers were, because they were not like these kind of teachers that give you a lot of games or anything like that. It
Ah,
was it
uh-huh.
was not like that. But it's like the attitude that the teachers
Mhm.
had. It was like,
Mm.
yeah, you can do it. They were very patient, and it was like, yeah, okay. So we need to treat students like that, I think, because
Mm.
when we want to be super strict, I mean, there are all kinds of teachers, right? And
Mhm.
some people need to have strict
Mhm.
teachers,
They work
right?
better that way, yeah, with
Yeah,
parameters
but
and
because
things.
it's like I know the way I work and I know the way that works for me,
Yep,
right?
yep.
But in my case, that is something that I liked because I felt confident. I was like, okay, if I don't understand anything, I am totally free to say, can you help me with this? Because I still don't understand, and say, like, okay, no, I still don't get it. Please try to find a different way to explain this to me. And they were very
Mhm.
patient. That is
Mhm.
something that is super important.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The games maybe don't
But
matter as much as long as you reach the person where they're at and you make them see that they can do it. And the attitude maybe of the teacher. Mhm.
yes, that is the thing that helped me. Now,
Mm,
not everybody is the same. Probably
sure.
there are some other people who need to have somebody who's stricter,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, probably that is for you. But we also need to try to find a way, or we need to try to understand how we work or how we learn better.
Mm, each person, yeah, each person has maybe a responsibility to themselves to know what works for them, right? Because no matter what the subject matter is, if you know how you learn best, you can pretty much learn anything, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And I think that that is the reason why I started to love English,
Ah, because of the
because it
teachers,
was
the
like,
enthusiasm of the
because of my
teachers.
teachers, because it was
Uh-huh.
like everything was very like relaxed, everything was interesting. It was like, hey, and did you know this?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, little by little, I remember that they were giving me just like challenges and so on, and it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And
Mm. Very
something else
supportive
is that,
environment, it sounds like.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that is
Mm.
what I want for my students. I want them to feel supported also.
Totally.
Now,
Totally.
and also another thing that is important is to know like what benefits you're going to be getting from English when you feel comfortable speaking it.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like you are going to be free to travel. You will be able to make friends in a lot of places. If you are in a dangerous situation or something, or you need some help, you are going to be able to communicate freely. Right now, for example, in my work, I need a lot of people from India.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if English was a roadblock for me, I would not be able to do it. And I would be just like consuming more time in order
Mm-hmm.
to train them. Because what I did is like, okay, this is something that I have talked many times before at work. So
Yep.
I will not be repeating this constantly. So I recorded like short training videos.
Nice.
And I was like,
Nice.
okay, uh, because of the time difference, like it's day here,
Yeah.
and then for them it's night and so on.
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
okay, like I am going to be sleeping, but they are going to be watching the videos, and then next day we can just check questions and then see what they executed, right?
Mhm. You're
So
saving your time, you're saving your voice, yes, all of their
yeah,
energy, totally, yes, and without
yes,
how could you do that without the medium of the language? Not possible.
yeah, exactly. Because
Mhm.
probably I would be recording the video and it would be like, no, again, no, again, no, people will not understand this, no, this, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You can even make it more fluent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I like my job as an engineer. I love my job as a teacher.
Mhm.
And without English, obviously, I would not be able to do any of these,
Mhm.
right?
Because you're in engineering, you're using your language for work, right? Not just to communicate about work, but in the work itself. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So you're surrounded by the language. You love it, obviously. You mentioned before some different kinds of benefits. When you were talking about understanding the rhythm, you were saying that it helped you to express yourself a little bit better and make yourself more understood. If you, I think you said if you were angry and you needed to, or you needed to
Mhm.
get help or something like that, how you could express yourself in a different way that you had no idea about in the rhythm. And can you tell me if now with your training videos, can you tell me a time when you used rhythm specifically in the video to help get your point across? Can you think of any examples?
Yes. When we when we give instructions, for example, sometimes we need to be very careful. Like, for example, first you are going to apply this change,
Okay.
and then once you apply it, you need to make sure that this is okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then now you go to the next one,
Mm-hmm.
and then you apply the second change. You make sure everything is consistent. You make sure that this column is the same than this one, and then that the requirements are all set. And now you can do the other. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, notice how applying a different intonation helps the other people understand better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if
Mm-hmm.
I had said that, like, first you need to check this, and then you apply the next change, and then you continue, and then when everything is consistent, you just continue with the rest. It's going to be like monotone.
Yeah,
People are going
yeah.
to get lost.
It sounds like a
They are not
machine
going to
gun coming at
understand.
me. It just doesn't stop. And I don't know what to pay attention to. I don't know what's important. So I probably just like turn off completely, me
Yeah,
hearing that. Mm-hmm.
and it's to be like, no, I don't understand. Instructions are not clear.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And maybe it's the exact same words, but when you change the rhythm and you focus more on the thought groups and you pick those key words and you stress specific words, then it becomes more clear. Same words, but if you say it with better rhythm, right, the point comes across much better and people understand more.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm,
exactly.
mm-hmm,
And even though you know the words, if you don't apply a correct intonation, sometimes people just don't understand. Yeah. I was in Cancun last month,
mm-hmm.
and I was there on vacation, and I had a friend coming over from Morocco. And we went on a trip. It was like a day tour. And we were on a boat, and then one of the guides gave instructions to her in English. And I was able to understand because his first language was Spanish. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously I understand when
Yeah.
somebody has an accent,
Uh-huh.
and this person is from my same country.
Yeah.
And I was able to understand. But my friend, I mean, she speaks Arabic, and she was like, "What?" She didn't understand. And then this guy repeated the same thing,
Yep.
and she didn't understand. And I remember that this guy got angry, and he was like, "Do you speak English?" That was so rude. And I was like, "Yes, she speaks English, but
Uh-huh.
if you," and I was like thinking as a teacher, it's like, if you only stressed
Mm-hmm.
things correctly, your message would be clearer, because I found it difficult to understand him,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I was able to understand. Now imagine if this is somebody who doesn't speak the same language, then it is
Yeah.
going to make this person feel lost or
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
this, right?
Or doesn't have
And
the
so,
same kind of analytical background as you, right? If you're already teaching, I don't know about you, but I'm like always listening. And when things are not perfect, I'm trying to say, okay, what does he mean? What's missing here, right? And because we're so used to that,
yeah,
I think with students, trying to find the mistake so we can help them. But if you're just some normal person, you're not gonna know where the dots don't connect, let's say. And so it's
exactly.
much more difficult for them. But we're used to that. But other people know. And you know the secret. You're like, okay, if you just stressed the key words and you just kind of put those a little bit longer and a little bit stronger, she would have gotten the message, probably. right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
And then
Uh-huh.
we can also take advantage of that because if, for example, we have a word that is difficult for us to pronounce or a transition between one sound and another, if we stress correctly, we're even going to be helping the other people understand better. It is
Mm-hmm.
going to be like, I didn't catch the rest,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
because he said this, probably he meant this
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm. I
And
got
it's like,
enough of the
okay.
words. I got enough to know what the main ideas are, and I can figure everything else out, right? I know we're talking about past or future because I know the context, right? So
Yeah.
if I can get the main things, I'll be okay. And what are the main things? The stressed words, right? So it doesn't matter if you're making little mistakes everywhere else. However, if you don't stress anything, then you'd really have to, I guess, work much harder at making everything perfect because it's already more difficult without the rhythm there.
And it doesn't matter if you speak fast or if you speak slowly.
Yes, the pace doesn't
If
matter.
everything sounds exactly the same, it is so boring and we stop paying attention and people just will not understand,
I
right?
had that teacher in school. Wah, 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 wah. That's all I heard.
Exactly. Yeah.
All I heard. Yes. Yes.
I think we should make the podcast like this all the time and then let's see if people really pay attention to
Yes.
what we're saying, right?
Da,
But
da,
if
da,
then
da,
we
da.
continue saying
Mhm.
or if we continue having this conversation just like this, people are just not going to be paying attention to us either,
Mhm.
right? So if we
Not gonna like
play
us.
a little bit, like there are some things that you can say a little bit faster, there are some things that
Mhm.
you can say a little more slowly, but
Mhm.
we need to their voice, definitely.
Yeah, there's this thing about like modulation, right? So if you can, I don't know, if you're thinking about popcorn, let's say about pace, you're talking about pace. So when I'm making some popcorn, right? At first it's like pop, 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 pop. And then you know it started, you know when it's in the
Yes.
middle, and you know when it ends. So
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like when we hear, it's not just a monotone popping, right? That wouldn't be helpful. But when you have that variation, that modulation, you know, oh, this is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the end. Maybe it's a thought group, maybe it's a whole sentence. Like you said in the beginning, that pause is really important to indicate something to me, right? Wait, there's pause. Why? Why? Are we done here? Oh no, we're just moving on. And so I think that that's the main thing. Like you said, it doesn't matter how slow the pace is or how fast I'm speaking, but what matters is if the words are punchy, right? If the words pop, like the popcorn.
Yeah.
So if the words pop, then I can follow you. But if the words don't
Exactly.
pop, then it's just like, you know how when you're in the rain and when it's like rainy season and it's just imagine if you just were in a tent and you had like a tin roof or something like that and it's just constant. And when it's constant, it's just noise. It's just white noise
Yeah.
in the background. Yeah. But you pay attention to the popcorn because you don't want it to burn. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the analogy that I can come up with in terms of the pace versus the actual, how should we say, the rhythm, right? Because people think they're the same thing, or they think that speed is the same, and it's not about speed and it's not about pace. It's about how you modulate that, I think, and pop those things. Yes. So,
Exactly.
What
Yeah.
else?
And another thing, I don't know if this happens to you or if you have had students like this, but sometimes people think that fluent means fast,
Oh, oh yes, that's a myth.
right?
Tell me about the myth of fast versus fluent.
It's like there are people who in Spanish who speak Spanish and they speak super slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that they are not fluent if that
Mm-hmm.
is their first language,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that it also has to do with personality. Sometimes I feel that because it's like there are people who are more energetic than others, and there are people who, even in their first language, they speak like this. They are a little
Mm.
bit more relaxed and everything,
Yeah, they're
right?
just a
But
chill person.
yeah,
Yeah, they're just slower. They have a different rhythm. They have a different pace. Yeah, of course, right? That's the beauty of all the different people, I think. And having that variety is wonderful. The part I don't like is when people are kind of put down for being slower than others, or it's related somehow to like intelligence or something like that. And it's not at all. It's just that's how
no,
you speak.
mhm,
And that's it. As long as you're understood. And to me, one of the main things of understanding, like you said, it's not little mistakes here and there. It's the main words that are popping. Do I have enough keywords to pick up what you're putting down? Are we are we throwing the ball back and forth? Or are you just throwing it and it's just going over a cliff because nobody cares about the ball, you know? Like, Conversation's like a ball game, I think, or like a frisbee game. Did you ever hear that joke about the person who was visiting America for the first time or United States for the first time? And I think it was a Brit. A Brit was in the US, right? Went to the park, Central Park, and saw two people playing frisbee. They're
Mhm.
watching frisbee back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and finally the game ends and they go up to them, to the players, and they say, Excuse me, could you tell us about this game? We're having a really hard time understanding it." And the players were like, "Yeah, we're just playing frisbee." He's like, "Okay, but who's winning? Like, I don't understand. How do you win?" It's not that kind of game. So I feel like conversation and comprehension and connection, it's not a win game, right? It's we're just throwing the frisbee back and forth. And
Yeah.
if you're yeah, that's how I kind of see it. Because I think the most important thing out of anything is that connection. And I feel like you had that connection with your teachers. You're now instilling that love of language and what's the point of language connection in your students now, and that must feel really good for you.
Yeah, I like it.
Mhm.
I really enjoy it. You know something? When I started teaching, it was just going to be for one summer.
Oh, really? I'm sorry, how many years ago?
13 years ago.
13
Yeah.
years ago? And
It was
and that
only
was
going to
supposed to be
be
a
one
summer.
summer. It was only going to be for one summer, and I
Uh-huh.
remember that I even went and saw the principal of the school, and I was like, yeah, you know something, I need to go back to college,
Mm.
so I will need to quit and everything. But thank you. And then I remember that I went back to my classroom, and I was like, no, I think that I'm really going to miss it. So I went back,
Uh-huh.
principal, and I was like, I changed my mind. I'm sorry. And she was very friendly, and she was actually like, yeah, you know that you can continue. We like the way you work. And I was like,
Oh,
oh, that was my first job, actually.
mhm. Wow, so nice that you
Yes.
realized that. You went back to the room and you had this feeling like, "I don't think
Yeah.
so. I think this is why I'm here." Wow, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yes.
I
And can
liked
you
it.
tell me a story of any of your students who have really, how should I say, really transformed the way you did? When you had something that this light went off, you said, and you're like,
Mhm.
"Wow, I never knew that before, and this changes things." Did you ever have a student come up to you and tell you that?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Well, one of my teachers, she is actually taking one of the courses with me.
No way.
And yeah, and she's like, I didn't think that this would be possible to learn, because many times it's just like we just need to replicate sounds, but we are not told exactly the things that we need to do. So they just tell you it needs to sound like this. Try to imitate. No, it's not there. But for example, something that we see with you is like exactly the things that you need to do with your mouth and so on.
Mm.
So she fell in love with teaching pronunciation, and now she pays a lot of attention to those things. So that is one case that I consider is very similar to mine, because she's also a
Mhm.
teacher.
Mhm.
But I also have another case of a student who moved to the States.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like suddenly I just saw on Instagram, because this guy added me. I started to follow me on Instagram. And then I followed back. And it was like, wow, now you live in a different place. And then the other day, I remember that I saw a video, and it was like, wow, like now you're speaking, and I see that you feel confident. And I remember how you were before it. And I'm not saying that all of that
Mm.
advanced because of me, but I know that I like a contribution,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
know that this guy, he was like one of those people who really fall in love with the language. So I know that he was
Yep.
trying here, there, and learning a little bit from this teacher and learning a little
Mhm.
bit from this other teacher.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
is what makes them, right?
Yeah, yeah. What a privilege
Amazing.
to be a part of that.
Yes, it feels super beautiful.
So nice when old students reach out to you and they say, "Remember me?" And I'm, of course I remember you." I have to admit, I'm terrible with names. But as soon as I see a picture of somebody, of course I remember you. How could I forget, right? For me, yeah, once a student, always a friend in a way. That's how I feel about it. So I love talking to old students. And speaking of your courses, as you said, you have a course that you would like to invite people to come to, correct?
Yes.
Ooh, tell us about
Yeah,
that.
I have this. Yeah, sure. I have this course called Pronunciation, Confidence, and Fluency. So
Mhm.
it is a program that is divided into three levels. Now, the three levels are independent from each other. So you can take course number one and then jump to course number three, depending on the content that you want to review.
Mhm.
Okay. And we open doors every month.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. So every month, if you sign up to the waiting list that I have on my profiles, if you go to TikTok at pronunciationinfluency.com or Instagram or Facebook, the
Mhm,
same
mhm.
at pronunciationinfluency.com, you're going to find the website and then you can just register. And when we open doors, students receive a notification in their emails indicating that we have doors open.
Nice, nice. And you're killing it. So I'm assuming that this is all online, right? There's no in-person classes for you.
Yeah, it's everything is online.
Everything's
Yes,
online now. Yeah, yeah. I see how many TikTok videos you put out all the time. So you have so much to tell people, so many ways in which to help them. And I know that you think that rhythm is one of these fundamental things that it doesn't matter kind of what you say, it matters how you say it. And rhythm is a huge part
exactly.
of that.
And it doesn't matter if you make grammar mistakes at the
Mhm,
end.
mhm,
A lot of people say, "No, I'm not ready because I this, because of that." Like sometimes we are very good at trying to find like not excuses, but sometimes we are like, no, we think that we are
mhm.
not in like the correct moment. But as I heard this week, it's like the best day to start working on something was yesterday and the
Yeah.
second, right? So
Exactly, exactly.
um, if we have grammar mistakes, it doesn't really matter,
Mhm,
right? As long
mhm.
as we make the messages clear.
Mm.
I know that when I speak, sometimes I also have grammar mistakes, but also because of the pronunciation, because of the confidence that we have at the moment
Yeah.
of speaking, it's like sometimes people just don't pay attention, right?
Mhm,
And it's
mhm,
like,
mhm.
was that
It's the
something wrong?
connection.
Oh, yeah, but I understood the message, and that is the thing that is the most
Uh,
important.
uh-huh. We often have a fear that people are gonna judge us for our mistakes, right? And you know my level in Spanish is not very high. So, imagine if I did that, though. Imagine if I let that stop me and I said, "Oh, I'm afraid of making mistakes." I wouldn't really get very far. That would be like a boxer saying that they don't wanna start boxing because they're afraid of getting punched in the face. And it's kind of
Yeah,
your
exactly.
job. It's your job to get punched in the face because you're gonna get better at it, and you're gonna avoid getting punched in the face, and you're gonna do great, right? So I feel like it's you can't actually get any better without making mistakes. It's not possible.
Exactly.
You learn very little by being successful all the time. You learn more with the more mistakes that you make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
then
pray
it's
for you.
also good when people correct you.
Mm,
It's like
mhm.
we need to learn how to take feedback
Yeah,
and how
yeah.
to receive feedback. I mean, obviously, we also need to know how to give feedback. But when somebody gives us when somebody says something like, you committed this mistake, it's like,
Mm,
okay, yeah, um, I'm not going to think that this is going to be like catastrophic nor anything like that. It's
yeah.
just, yeah, that is a mistake. I think that probably next time I'm not going to do it again,
Mhm, mhm.
right? Or when you realize like, oh, I said this thing and it is not like this. It's like, come on, but you learn from it,
Mm,
right?
mhm, mhm. And if
And I
you don't make
remember,
that mistake, you're not gonna get the feedback you need. If you're avoiding the mistake, it's not gonna get ever fixed, you know? So we need to be comfortable enough to put ourselves out there and make mistakes. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is the best way to move forward, I think.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
We discover things like, I said this. I'm not really sure that this is the right thing to say.
Mm,
So,
mhm,
like, we investigate and it's like, is it right?
mhm, mhm,
Okay, no, it's this way. Okay. And then
mhm.
next time, that is even going to be more representative for you because it's going to be like, once I committed this mistake and now
Yeah,
I know the correct
yeah.
one. And yeah,
Yeah, or you do the investigation and you say, "Aha, I knew it." And then you just love that phrase or you love that thing because you took the time to really verify that and you're like and then you own it, right? And you're like, I know that this is good. I'm gonna say it again. This is gonna be my new
yeah,
thing. I'm gonna say it every day." Yes, exactly.
I have a story about it.
Oh, tell me, tell me.
I was in New York because I went to visit my stakeholders of the company. And we were driving. We were going to this restaurant, and then I said, "Kevin, but you need to take the return." And Kevin, my coworker, he was like, "What do you mean return?" And he was like, "Yeah, you need to take the next return." He was like, "What do you mean return?" And I
And
was
he's
like,
missing it and he's missing
"I
it and he's
to
missing it.
go back the same way."
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
He was like, "Oh, you mean the U-turn?" And I was like,
Yes,
"I
yes.
will never forget this word."
Yeah, and if you didn't know, you wouldn't guess, "I'll just take the letter U and put it as the word turn," right? You need to yeah,
I-
return, U-turn. Why do we need 2 different things? I don't know, but they exist, and how are you meant to know? Yeah,
but
it's those things that get stuck in your brain, and it makes it more sticky, right? Like we were saying with the cassette tapes, and I remember I'm very kinesthetic, so I remember just pressing the button and it just went click really heavy, and I just won't forget that, ever. And so if you like you said, if you know best how you like to learn, for example, I'm super kinesthetic. I gotta touch stuff, I gotta feel it. If it's tactile, it's mine. And other people are very auditory, and other people are a lot of people are multimodal, which is why I love subtitles as well with your audio
Uh-huh.
because it just speaks to different parts of you at the same time. Oof, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. But it's fun to learn having those kind of experiences. Then the other day, it also happened. I was here in my city in Querétaro, and we had some visitors from the States also. And then I remember that once I went to pick them up at the hotel, and then I don't remember what we were talking about, but we I remember that I said the word tunnel, but instead of saying tunnel, like
Mhm.
somebody escaped using a tunnel,
Yeah.
I said tunnel.
Ah. Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
then his name was Chris. And he's like, "What do you mean tunnel?" And I was like, "Yeah, he escaped using a tunnel." Like, tunnel? And yeah, like when you make a hole in the floor and
Yeah.
then you just go from one room, you go under
Mhm,
the
mhm.
ground and then you go out in the next room. I was like, "Oh no, a tunnel." And I was like, "What did I say? Tunnel." How is it? Tunnel. I was like, "What's the difference?" Like, it's like,
Yeah.
no, he said, "No, because I thought that when you were saying tunnel, you were saying something with a T-O-O."
Oh, I was
And I
thinking
was like,
TU like tuna. That's what I was thinking, but I can see TOO, tunnel, uh-huh.
no, he said, "I thought that it was like something spelled T-O-O or something like
Oh,
that." And I
uh-huh,
was like,
uh-huh.
"No, it was Tunnel." And he said, "No, it's tunnel, not tunnel."
Mhm.
Ah, okay. So notice how pronunciation is super important. A lot of
Mhm.
people sometimes think that pronunciation is like luxury, that it's like,
Oh.
no, no, it's like, it's just clarity.
Mhm,
That's it.
mhm,
It's only
mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's
right?
for
If you
communication.
want to sound like a native, because we always talk about it, right? Like there are people who say, I want to sound like a native speaker. And
Yeah.
it's like, mm,
That's
that's a
because
little
that's
bit
what you were
difficult.
told to say. I mean,
Yeah.
not told to say, but it's the I have this pet peeve against when people say, "I don't need subtitles. I want to get to the point where I don't need subtitles." And it's a pet peeve of mine because you think that because somebody else said that, and you think that's what you should want too, right? So somebody said, "Oh, he's like a native," or, "Oh, I'd like to be like a native." You thought, "Yeah, yeah, me too, me too, me too. That's like a good idea." Without really thinking, like, what are actually my goals here? And to me, they're on the same page when somebody just says, "Oh, I want to be like a native." Well, I don't feel like you've really thought about your goals and what that might mean for you because I think you mean something else, but you don't quite know what it is yet. And you have some other needs or desires behind that. Yeah, and
Mhm.
but it sounds like this has happened to you too.
Yeah. I remember that there was a period of time when I was like, no, I want to sound like a native.
Mhm, mhm.
And then it's like, if you work towards that direction, it's like super complicated. It's better when you
Mm.
start feeling comfortable with your own accent,
Mhm.
when you start being like, okay, I'm not going to sound like a native speaker. I'm going to be when I speak.
Mhm,
And this is
mhm.
something that I like, that I have my own accent.
Yes.
Even when I sell my course, it's not like you're going to speak like a native or this is
Mhm,
100% American, not anything like that.
mhm.
Because I think that I don't even sound like a native. But something that I like is that when I am in the States and when I take an Uber or when I communicate with someone, when I meet people, it's like, where are you from? And it's
Mhm.
like, from Mexico. Oh, it's because I didn't understand. No, not they don't say I didn't understand. Like I didn't get your accent, like where you were from.
Ah, they didn't
Because
catch
it's
what it
like,
was.
I don't
Mhm.
know if you are from this place or from another, because it's a little
Mhm.
bit like neutral,
Yep,
not
yep.
exactly American, but it's
Mhm.
easy to understand.
Yes.
And it's like my own accent. So this is something that I like.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's the
that is
best
what I,
when yeah, when somebody well, what I wanted to say is how you said it, how you framed it, I get a lot of people who do recognize that, and they'll say, "Oh, it's not that I need to sound like a native." They say, "I just don't want people to know exactly where I'm from." Right? So they just want some international accent. They just want to not be pegged on, from the first word in that way. So I think a lot of people are starting to realize like I do wanna sound like I wanna sound, and I wanna sound like me in English, and maybe they don't know what that is in the beginning of the journey, but then they realize that that's actually the goal that they're going towards.
yeah. And we
Mhm.
start creating our own accent when
Mm.
we start working on it, when we start to discover like, okay, this is difficult for me. This is easy for me.
Mhm.
Okay. And then when we start also mixing it with our personality, right?
Your experiences?
yeah, your experience is the way you express yourself even in your first language,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
And it's crazy. I like it. I really like it. And because I mean there are people who say I want to sound like a native, and in my case it's like,
Right.
oh,
Mhm. Yeah,
go
and I'm
for
not
it.
gonna say no. Yeah, I'm not gonna say, "Oh, no, you shouldn't want that." You can want whatever you want. But I think a lot of people don't always know what they want at the beginning, and that's a good place to start, right? It's a goal that they have, but often we modify the goals along the way. So we don't have to stick to that if that's what we think.
Mhm.
For example, for me, in Spanish, would I like to sound like a native? Sure. Do I think I'm gonna pass ever? No. Like I get in any Uber here and first of all, they get my name wrong. Instead of Bianca, they always call me Blanca, and, and then so it's all downhill from there usually, but then they ask me where I'm from, right? Because already when I've corrected them on my name, they can already tell that I'm not from there, probably, right? But
Mhm.
they might not know where I'm from. So for me, that's okay. As long as you can't guess where I'm from originally. They can probably guess because, US and Mexico were neighbors. But I much prefer that just to say like, hmm, this person isn't from here, but I don't quite know where they're from. I'm cool with that. I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
Yeah. As
and
long
it's
as I
interesting because
understood.
then you can start a conversation.
Exactly, exactly. And it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be about where you're from. Yes. So,
Yeah.
any specific closing remarks that you wanted to add to this? Is there anything else you'd like to add about rhythm, about thought groups, about word stress, about reductions? Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
Yeah. If you want to work on your reduction, follow the steps that we just mentioned. Number
Mm.
one, identify where you can make pauses. Okay. If there
Mhm.
is a combination of consonants that you consider is difficult, okay, then you can go through them and see if, for example, there is a way you can break them. Okay.
Mhm.
But in some other cases, you can also see if there's a way to connect them or to drop
Mhm.
probably one consonant, right? But we need to know how to make pauses.
Okay.
And then the next step would be identify the most important words.
Okay.
Okay. And I usually like to choose one word per thought group
Mm. Mm.
because
Me
also we
too.
need to be very careful. If we stress one word, we don't stress another one, and then we stress the next one, and we go like that. Then it is going to sound like this, and it is going to be difficult, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
for
yeah.
example, if you say everything flat, and then you arrive to the important word, to the focus word, and you elevate your tone in there, and
Mhm.
then you go down, it is going to sound better, right?
Yeah, it's gonna sound more interesting, I think, and people are gonna remain interested when they do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely, absolutely. Yes, that's a great piece of advice. And what else?
Yeah. And the last one would be identify what words can be reduced.
Mm,
Now,
mhm,
this podcast is not about that topic, but investigate function words, and you're going to discover that there are some words that when you pronounce them in isolation, they sound one way, and when you pronounce them in context, they sound a different way,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And then there we are going to see that you can say on the table, like pronouncing word by word, it's on the table. But when you put it in context, it's like it's on the table. And then it sounds very similar to in and right? So
Because 'cause we're
so
reducing that. Yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And
So
"n," that sound, that schwa sound, you're gonna start seeing it everywhere. If you look at reduction, you're gonna say, "Oh my god, how did I not notice this before?" It's everywhere, and we're reducing so many more words that you might realize, but once that light goes off in your head, I think it's much easier to find those things and then to use them whenever you want, right? However much or however little works for you.
yeah,
Definitely.
exactly.
Definitely. And and
Okay.
and what else? And what else would you like to say before we say goodbye?
Um, Practice a lot.
That was
Yeah,
simple.
if we only do the things that we see in class, you're not going to go anywhere.
Mm,
Or probably you will, but it is going to be a longer journey.
mhm,
So
mhm.
you need to do, for that reason, I always say that we need to try to fall in love with the language because then we start paying attention every time. And it's like we are going to be in constant practice, even though we don't know that we are practicing.
It doesn't
Right.
feel like practice.
So,
Yeah. It doesn't feel
yeah,
like it. It just feels like I'm playing, I'm having fun, I'm doing the thing I love. That's not work anymore. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I
So we
love it.
need to try to go the extra mile and do more than what we just do in the classroom.
Mhm. Yes, and
Yeah.
yeah, people think that that's it. I go to my class once a week or whatever, and that's enough. But it's definitely it. It's enough if that's what you want to be enough, but for most people, that's not gonna get the results that they're actually looking for. Yeah, then
Yeah,
I wanna put more
exactly.
than
We
that.
need to also do a little bit extra, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be like 1 hour,
Mhm.
right? Like I always say, if
Mhm.
you practice only 10, 15 minutes,
Mhm.
that's okay. And
Yeah,
then you can
yeah.
just continue doing the rest of the things that you need to do that day,
Mhm.
right? But little by little, and then we see huge
Yeah. It's
changes.
not how much, it's how often. It's not,
Yeah.
"I can sit down for 5 hours on a Saturday." It's better than nothing, for sure, but wouldn't it be better to sit down for just, 10 minutes every day? So much better. That frequency is so much more important than a whole massive amount of time that you're probably gonna forget 10 minutes later. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Excellent advice, Daniel. I always love talking to you, and you have great advice, you have great stories, and you know that I want to have you on the show again. So hopefully we'll talk to you very soon.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think that one day we can talk about funny experiences while learning English or Spanish,
That's a
right?
good idea.
Like,
Yes, I'm gonna have to start actually writing down my stories and yeah, you do the same. So your job is to prepare by writing down the stories, and I have some stories from French as well and probably Arabic
Mhm.
because every time you make mistakes, it's worth writing down. I think so. Let's
Yeah.
let's write down our experiences and then we'll have another chance to talk about it another time.
Yes, and I think that this would also be motivating.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
like other people will be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, there are more people, even teachers, pass like through similar situations, right?"
Exactly. We get through them, and then we're stronger because of them, and it just makes a good story. So, yeah, probably
Yeah.
teachers have the best stories, I imagine, because the people who
I don't know if they're
never
the
made it
best.
there, they never got the
Yeah.
stories because they gave up,
Yeah.
probably. Totally.
Yeah, and this is
Definitely.
something that we usually don't share in class because we are focused on the topic and so on, right?
Mhm.
But for example, this thing of the U-turn probably is going to resonate with some people and it is going to be like, ah, yeah, it's not return, it's U-turn.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Yes,
it's
yes,
good. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, and it helps me to remember in Spanish because, of course, I'm thinking U-turn. Of course, it's a U, but it makes sense in Spanish too. The verb is to return, so you're gonna call it the
Yes.
noun, the return. It totally makes sense, right? Both of them make sense
Yes.
in their own way, but now it's gonna help me stick it in my head too. Absolutely. As usual, it's always a joy to talk to you, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, okay, Bianca.
Bye,
Very good. And I
Daniel. See
hope
you
you invite
soon.
me to
Bye.
the next episode and then we
You
can
bet.
talk about that.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
bye
you,
for
Bianca.
now.
Have a good
See you.
evening.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.